tried to break into my car last night, which makes no sense.
You have to affirm.
Right. This I was, the Chayza had a batchen, his name was Rav Hershel Astropoulos. He once said that Ganovin broke into his house at night, and his wife said, Hershel, wake up, there are burglars in the house. He quickly took the blanket and threw it over his head. So what are you doing? He says, there's nothing in this house to steal. I'm so embarrassed. I don't want them to see who it is, okay? Like, that's how it is. Okay. Well, they say a bunch of burglars broke into my house and started looking around for cash, and I joined them. And I said, see, if you find it, I'll find it. Okay. So I don't know if someone tried to break in or whatever the case was, but the side door was like, the sliding door of the van was like jammed open, and it wouldn't close. Not the first time this happened. So I usually take out my reliable screwdriver and hitch it this way, hitch it that way. But now it was like totally jammed. And here I had to take my kids to yeshiva in the morning. So of course I told them to get into the back seat, which had no connection to the slide door. So it's, you start driving, and I remember the old days when I had this station wagon. Remember the station wagons? They had that door in the back that swung wide open. So like it didn't hold closed unless you really slammed it. So provided that nobody was sitting in the back seat, it had an automatic system. So basically you hit the brakes very hard and boom, it slammed closed. So this one also, if no one is behind, usually you hit the brakes and it closes, an automatic closer. It doesn't work with any sensors, so it's like filter free from computers, no Schachter of internet or anything, it just closes, But now it wasn't closing because obviously the latch was jammed or something. And it just wasn't closing. So kids climbed into the car, get into the back seat, put on their seatbelts, and then being that the door, every time I would go a little uphill or press on the gas pedal, the side door would slide open. So we had a whole mahalach with bungee strings that were connected to each other, looked like a whole network that went around the car and kept it closed. The only car with an Erev inside, I told them. And it was fun when the kids got out. They had to go through the passenger door, and Shema Shabbos car, right, and climb out. Anyway, so on my way back from yeshiva, so this person came to me and said, "Are you going to Bar Park?" As I'm going to my car, I said, "Okay," and I get in the passenger side, and he opens up the passenger door, and there's like these bunch of bungee strings in different directions, and he says, "What's this holding down?" I said, "The door." He asked me if I know when the bus goes to Bar Park. I said, no, it's okay. I said, it's not your door, it's the sliding door. You could sit in the front. He wasn't convinced. He said, as much as I said. I many times tell you the story. I once picked somebody up. It was really cold outside, and I told him that, today with a car, it's one of the only ways to really be mekayim the mitzvah of achnasas archem, because you don't have wayfarers on the street. The mamish don't have where to sleep. And then as he tried to open the door, when he got to a stop, the handle came off in his hand. I went out the other side, and I tried to open the door from the outside, and the handle came off him. And so at the end, he had to squeeze through the passenger side. And this was a yid that was a groiser mensch, shall we say, in a nice way. And he was pretty much jammed in behind the steering wheel, and said, "This is great, I'm going to have to call the fire and the fire department to so open the car." Finally, he worked his way out. He tells me, I'll never forget what he told me. He told me, with your car, he says, not only do you fulfill achnasas archim, you also fulfill pidyon shvuyim, he said, redeeming prisoners. Says you have two mitzvahs. Anyway, so the guy finally agrees to come with me to Bar Park. It's hard to give somebody a ride to Bar Park and he's saying Tillim the whole time, So they say that bus driver came up to Shemayim and they let him in front of all the other Rabbanim. They took him ahead. And the Rabbanim said, "What's going on over here?" He said, "You have to understand that some of you, not all of you, chas v'shalom, but some of you started to dash and people fell asleep. He started to drive, everyone started doing tshuva on that bus." So, in a way, Okay. All that in jest, of course. So anyway, so the guy was telling me, why do you drive a car like this? I said, it's a sakana. I said, no, I don't take chances with sakana. I mean, nobody was sitting near the door that opens up, trust me. I said, and I always check everything out. I said, the brakes, the front end, the tires, that gets checked regularly, and I don't, he says, so why don't you just buy a new car? This guy's getting, you're going for a ride to Borough Park. What are you getting into my personal life here for? You're touching on very sensitive issues. So I said, I don't know, it's kind of me already. So as he gets out, and it's late, it's Wednesday after Parasha, and I think I hear that the back brakes are squeaking. It could be they were squeaking a long time. We just never knew because the door wasn't open. But now with the bungee string method, some of the door stays open. So I had the door fixed, corrected, and then I came in, and the mechanic takes off the tires. And he shows me, the brakes and the rotors and this and that. I said, is this dangerous or not? He says, no. He says he would say that you have another 5,000 miles before it becomes dangerous. I said, listen, I'm not going to remember in 5,000 miles. So change the brakes. He says I should change all the brakes and the rotors. He says, yeah, the rotors, the brakes, the brake line, the pads, whatever, the whole, everything.
I don't want a one-way trip, so I named it.
Yeah. All the way through. So we make a cheshbon how much it's going to cost, and he gives me the bill, and I'm looking at the bill. It's like a big bill, and I'm beginning to wonder, maybe enough is enough, putting so much money into the car. And one of the tires didn't look so good, so he replaced the tire. So I'm trying to think what I should do. And I asked my mechanic, should I keep this car? And he said yes. So that already made me a little, I realized that's one of the things he's mispalel for on Rosh Hashanah, that I keep my car. So I said, how long is it going to last? He says, listen, how long does anything last? He says, we're all tenants on this world. I said, when you start getting a musa shmus on your mechanic, you're in trouble. So I don't know, I just told him, what, fix it. So fine, all 4 brakes and the tires and everything, just the whole thing. I figured I should practice what I preach. And then I got a call that a brother-in-law of mine was making a vart. So I said, I'm going to go over to L'chaim, I'm going to go over to L'chaim, who would happen to be next to my mechanic. Of course, I hope he doesn't listen to the shiurs. He doesn't realize that's the only reason I came, because I happen to be 2 blocks away. But okay, so, I would have gone anyway. So you got to learn how to do these disclaimers. Like at the end of the commercial, you say things real fast, they get it all in, I would have gone anyway, no. Okay. So, after a while, you learn these things. Anyway, so and as I'm walking, I'm thinking about my problems. One of the things when you walk, you get a chance to think about your problems. And I began to accuse myself that the reason I patchka with this car is because it's a nice distraction from the real problems in life. Because the real decisions that I have to make and the real things I have to fix is, tough, and it weighs down on you. And this way I'm busy with the car. And I was saying, maybe enough is enough. Stop with the shtick. Should I lease a car? Should I buy a car? And back and forth and back and forth. And as I'm coming into the vart, I have this machshava that comes into my mind. And the machshava is, I wish we had a Baal Shem Tov Kedushas Levi we can just go into. Probably would be embarrassed. Should I lease or buy a new car? Baal Shem Tov, you want this to be in the storybooks 200 years from now? What do you... I'm saying, wouldn't it be so easy if just we had a way of an Urim the Tumim, a way of, it weighs down so heavily. And I was thinking about buying the car, but I was really thinking about more serious issues that are going on in my life, which way to go and what to do. And at one point it was getting me down a shtickle, and I come into the vart, all smiles, and I see the chassan and the father, the zayd of the chassan, and I recognize this yid because I think he was one of my rebellion, and I said, wait a second. And I go over to this yid and I said, weren't you, his name is Rabbi Feinstein, it's Tzaddik Avi, he lived in the East Side many years. I said, aren't you the one that drove Reb Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, from his apartment to yeshiva for more than 25 years? You used to pick him up and drive him. He said, yeah, that was me. And I said, you once told me a story about that car. I've sat in that car. And he told me the story again. He had a 67 Chevy, okay? Which is compared to my car, it's at least a year, head. But he had a 67 Chevy, and he drove Reb Moshe for 25 years. He picked up Reb Moshe in the morning and drove him to Tveres Yerushalayim. And I said, did it ever happen that the car didn't start in the morning, you couldn't get there? So he said it happened once, and when the car reached its 100,000 mile, something went on the engine, and the mechanic said, 100,000 miles, you're going to fix it. So he didn't know what to do, and the next morning he took a cab and picked up Reb Moshe, because he didn't want to lose his mitzvah. And what a schos. So Reb Moshe said to him, where's the car? So he said, he thinks he's finished with that car already. So Reb Moshe said to him, what's after Anaya? What do you need a new car for? He said, you don't have to fix it, so why don't you fix it? So he said, I have a feeling that Moshe sense like that need to buy a new car. Like, you want a new car or do you want a new image? Like, what do you want exactly? So he said, it has 100,000 miles on it. Why should he fix, why should he fix it? So Rabbi Moshe said, fix it, you'll get another 100,000 miles out of it. He said, of course, he fixed it. And he said that the car went, as I heard the story from the man today, the driver himself, the owner of the car, the owner of the title, he said that car went another 110,000 miles. He says it died at 210,000 miles, and he said this second 110,000 miles, besides for basic maintenance, your oil changes and your tune-ups, he never had to do a single repair on the car. The entire 110,000 miles. And here I am not reading the story in a book, I am hearing it from this Yid, this tzaddik himself, who had the schus of driving the Gadol Hadar, the tzaddik Hadar, for so many years. And I said to myself, now come on, if that's not Hashgacha Pratis, right? Now I know Rav Moshe didn't tell it to me, I wish, but Rav Moshe told it to him. But it was almost min hashamayim. I mean, here I am, and I'm thinking about it, and it's right there, and it's in front of me. And it reminds me what the Brisker Rav said. The Brisker Rav said that if somebody does not believe in Hashgacha Pratis, said the Brisker Rav, that he's not a apikairis, he's a fool. Because if you look around, you are going to see it. You're going to see it b'chush. You're going to see it clearly. And I walked out of that vart feeling like, you got to be careful what you think or the tainas you have on it. Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is listening to you. Okay? You want an answer? I can give you answers. Now, there's that famous story of the guy that pulled into a mechanic and he said, I want to fix my brakes. And the mechanic said, he came back after an hour, the mechanic said, I couldn't fix your brakes, so I made your horn much louder. Right? There are some people that have that policy in life. Instead of fixing the brakes, in as much as what's going wrong in their life, they would rather scream and complain. And some people have that attitude bein adam l'makayim, and they have that attitude bein adam l'chaverei. That instead of fixing the brakes, they would rather start tooting the horn louder. Avram Avinu went through 10 nisyanos. The Nesiva Shalom says, Maisa avay simil abanim, and he quotes the Maranayim, that every person in his life goes through 10 nisyanos. There are, you may say, what do you mean 10 nisyanos? I had 30 just today. But there's subcategories of nisyanos, subcategories of tests. But after 120 years, one of the things we're going to see, we've spoken at different occasions, that the Baal Shem Tov says that there are 42 stations in the life of a person, just like the Yidden went through the Membeis Masois. But there are 10 basic nisyanos in your life. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to show us, at the end of our lives, here were the 10 basic nisyanos that you have in the course of your life. So you're going to say, great, but Avram Avinu passed all of his nisyanos. So what about us that fail? So it's interesting. You could take a closer look at the Passion. Of course, I say this with much reservation, and one has to understand what this means. But did Avram Avinu pass all of the nisyanos, or did he make mistakes? Now, again, Avram Avinu's mistakes are beyond any mitzvah we will ever do in our life. But the Ramban says that Avram Avinu's decision to proceed to Mitzrayim after the hunger took over the land was considered a chait relative to the level of Avram Avinu. The Rabbeinu Bechaya discusses that putting Sarah into the box and hiding her was considered a mistake. The Medrash tells us, when Avram Avinu said, how do I know that this is going to work, then I'm going to yashin it, even though the Mefarshim will explain, he didn't mean to doubt the Kadosh Baruch Hu's words, he meant to say, how do I know that Klal Yisrael is going to have this level of schusim, but still it's considered a chait. According to one sheet in the Medrash, that's why we had the 400 years of Golus Mitzrayim. So, wait a second. Avram Avinu passed his nisyanos, but passing nisyanos does not mean that we don't make mistakes. Of course, there are Avram Avinu's mistakes. It's like that story of that person that went to Tashlach by his Rebbe and he dove into the water. And they said, why? He says, the Rebbe's sins would be mitzvahs for me, I'm going to look for them. Don't suggest you do that if your Rebbe does Tashlach by the East River, because you may come up with more than you've bargained for, but come up with some of the mafia sins over there, right? But in the process of Nisyonos, there are setbacks. And I think that's what Chazal are telling us. Why are Chazal telling us that Avraham Avinu made mistakes? Why is this necessary? There is no one that had the Mesiras Nefesh of Avraham Avinu. So what is the point of pointing out, being critical of some of his decisions? Other than to teach us not to be hurt by the mistakes that we make in our life in the process of, as we go through the 10 Nisyonos. Because mistakes are inevitably part of the process. The Chidushei Arim explains that the term Nisayon, when a person has a Nisayon, what that means is you lose all of your madregos. And that means a person may have questions in his amunah. He feels a terrible lack of advice or lack of direction. He sees a terrible amount of contradiction in his life. It may be the most confusing moment in your life. And you think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu abandoned you. Where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And that is the moment of Nisayon. That is precisely the moment that all cameras are pointed at you. The most terrifying and confusing moment in Avraham Avinu's life were the moments before the Akedah. We know now that that's the reason we're alive. We only exist in the schus of the Akedah. Says the Shlach Kaddish. Stop for a moment and think. In that moment of your life that is the most terrifying, in that moment in your life that is the most confusing, in that moment in your life when you get into bed at night and you say, there's no way I'm going to sleep. I've never had such a problem. I don't have a clue how to deal with this. How do you know that this is not your Akedah? Says the Shlach Kaddish. Think about this. This is my Akedah. You want to blow this? Now try to picture for a moment. And my father used to learn the pasuk with me this way. We learned Chumash. That here comes Avraham Avinu, and he has a brand new idea. Take your avodah zaras, toss them out the window, crush them, grind them up. I'm going to teach you a new concept, believing in Hashem. And he has a whole bunch of people behind him, and they're all excited. We're going to believe in Hashem. We're going to dive into Hashem. Our life is going to be so hunky-dory. And what did they get? What did they get? A drought and a hunger. And only in their area. Only in the group of people, right? He rav ba'aretz, only in that aretz, not in the entire area. Right? So Avraham Avinu, a big sign. Believe in Hashem and you'll get your own exclusive hunger, just for you. And Avraham Avinu at this moment is at a moment of indecision. And here he has to leave. He has to basically run for his life. And he doesn't know where to go. And Hashem is not advising him where to go. So he has to make a decision. And the Ramban tells us, ultimately, it was not the correct decision. Going to Mitzrayim, whatever that means. I want to ask you a question. Avraham Avinu, in his travels, so Rashi tells us again and again, he stopped over here because he saw that, here they're going to do Avodah Zarah. He stopped over here because he saw Yidden need a tefillah, 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later. By the Bris Ben Absarim, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Avram every aspect of Galus till Mashiach is going to come. And Avraham Avinu had to make that decision to choose either Gehenna or Galus, and he had to pick Galus. And the Medrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Avraham Avinu all the major kings until Mashiach is going to come. He saw everybody. He knows more than we know. He knows who's going to win the election. He doesn't have to bother with these polls. He saw everything. They say Joe Biden said to her, they gave him a little baby to kiss or something today, and the kid was crying. He said, don't worry. He tried to calm the kid down. And Mommy said, shh. And he said, Romney's not going to win. Don't worry, he said to the little kid. Right? That's a good move for Joe Biden. A clever move. Okay. Now, Avraham Avinu knew everything. But he didn't know where to go. What's pshat? He went to the wrong place? You saw everything till Mashiach comes, and you didn't know where to go? And not only that, he makes a mistake. And the emes is that is what a Nisayon is. We know everything, but when a Nisayon comes, so this is what happens to us. So the Rabbeinu Shalom takes away what we need to know. And we're on our own. And you're on our own, we could make mistakes. And guess what? Making mistakes is part of the process. As we've said many times. Gemara says there were 4 people that died without chait. Who were they? Binyamin. They were Yishai, Amram, right, and Kloiv, David HaMelech's son. So Fektig some cipher. So why don't we say Lekei Yishai? We just start our Shemon Esrei, Lekei Yishai, Lekei Kloiv, Lekei Binyamin. He says, why do we do the Shiva Royim? So the some cipher says, look, he says all of the Shiva Royim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, David. He says they got involved in klal work. They got involved in people. And when you get involved in yeshivas and fundraising and people and moisdes, you are gonna make mistakes. He says the other 4 lived relatively secluded lives. People came to them to ask advice. That's still not in a tall order to be nifta b'leichait. He says, but ultimately, says some cipher, who does the Kadosh Baruch Hu love more? So who did HaKadosh Baruch Hu make our royim? Those that dived in and took on life and made mistakes, or those who had no mistakes? So you see clearly where things are going. And I think interesting thing. For the last, I think 2.5 years, I have like a streak that on every Shabbos I had an opportunity to speak to some oilam. It wasn't necessarily in a stadium, it could have been a chevratilim, it could have been a couple of kids, but I always had, Baruch Hashem, the opportunity to speak to some people. And it says it's a big union of kibbut av'aim to be mechadish something in Torah on Shabbos. Any limit of Torah on Shabbos is a big schus for neshamas and shemayim. So it was something I always tried to look for, underneath. So last week I didn't have anything. I mamish did not. It was Friday, and I don't have anyone to talk to this Shabbos except for my own Shabbos table. Then I got to get the kids to sit there. I never did that before, so And all of a sudden I get a call from a certain person that runs shiurim and says, "Are you available to Shabbos?" I said, I was tempted to say, "Oh, you can't call me a Shabbos before." Then I called her back an hour later. "Oh, there was this cancellation." Says, "What am I?" "No, I'm available. No one called me this Shabbos." She says, "Great, come." She says, "There was a last minute change, over here." I said, "It wasn't a last minute change." I said, I was supposed to be by you Shabbos. Obviously, that's why I didn't have where to go. It wasn't a last minute change. It looks like it was a last minute change. I said, it wasn't a last minute change. Is again what the Briskerov said. There are times that we don't know what the next move is. But as things begin to happen, and that, says the Sfas Emes, is the bracha of El Haaretz Asher Areka. He said, the Eibishter said to Avram Avinu, "Go to this great land. I'm going. Where do I go?" Can't tell you. I'll tell you. When time comes, you'll see. And Avram is off. El Haaretz Asher Areka is the basis of bracha. Because there is a time in life where we have to say, let me see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in store for me. Ich weiß nicht. I don't know. Let me see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in store for me. And I once heard that it's a beautiful skula. You open up the Sefer Torah, or you're listening to the Balkaira read Parasha Lech Lecha. And you hear HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avram Avinu, "Go! Where am I going? El Haaretz Asher Areka, the land I will show you. No clue. Just go." Okay, he sets his GPS where Hashem wants me to go. That's where I am going to go. I am moving. Is there anyone in their lives that doesn't have this matzif? I have situations going on in my life now, and I don't know how this is going to resolve itself. I don't know where I'm going. So listen to that Balkaira. Be Maver Sedra and listen carefully. El Haaretz Asher Areka. To the land that I am going to show you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Let me wait and see what you have in store for me. How do I know what you have in store? I'll see what happens. There are so many situations in life where we don't have answers. So I say, by the next year of Parashas Lech Lecha, I'll know where this year's Nisyanis should have led me to. And I'll have next year's Nisyanis. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you already know. El Haaretz Asher Areka, I'll wait for you to show me. Connect to Avram Avinu. You can always do it. But this week you can do it more so. Because the Zohar HaKadosh says that the stories of the parasha is crowned, it's embedded into the bloodstream of Klal Yisrael. And that bracha we can connect to. Now it's interesting. So my mechanic said, when he gave me the Musa Shmus, that we're just tenants down here in this world. The emes is that you see this in the Paiskim, when they talk about the Isser, that it's also for a person, it's prohibited to inflict a wound in yourself. So there's a lashon in the Paiskim, even in the Rishonim, that your body is not yours. It's on lease from God. It's a lease under the Rebbeinu Shalom. So it's a rented car. You can't do whatever you want with it. And they bring a raya from the Rambam. That the Rambam in Hilchas Chayvel Lamazik says, because you have the Sugi in Perga Chayvel, but the Rambam says you're not allowed to hurt somebody. Right? And from where do we learn out? You're not allowed to, where's the Issur? You're not allowed to smack someone. Anyone know? Right, so it says that if you're called a rush, it says but that says he's called a rush. But where does it specifically say you can't do it? So we learn it out from that the shluach bezdin is not allowed to give someone an extra zetz, so just for the sake of just for good luck, one more zetz. He's not allowed. He's over a lav, and if that's true for the shluach bezdin, he gives malchus kal v'chaimer. You're not allowed to smack someone, right? Once had a yid that in my, I don't want to say in my shul, a shul, that the two got into it, and he gave him a zwei patch, but it was with a good shear, and the guy took him to a din Torah, and the Bezdin paskin that he should pay him a certain amount of money. Mm-hmm. So he said, how much? So he said 200. So he turned to the guy, if I knew it was so cheap, he says, I would have given you a double. He says, okay. So Lamaisa. So Zak the Rambam, when the Rambam says you're not allowed to, that it's usher to smack someone, the Rambam adds, and you're also not allowed to hurt yourself. But you're not allowed to inflict damage into someone, and you're also not allowed to inflict damage into yourself. So many ask, why does the Rambam throw that in over there? It belongs more in Hilchos Deis, and when the Rambam talks about health and so on. Why does the Rambam throw that in? So some of the Rishonim say that no, that's the Rambam is learning Pshat. Why can't you inflict damage in your own body? The same way I have no right to inflict damage into someone else's body, I have no right to inflict damage into my own body, because my own body is not mine either. It's rented from God. It's rented from Hashem. And I have no right to do any damage to it. So we're not allowed to inflict pain into our body. Well, let's try to make a cheshbon. There is no question today that stress is a major factor in the health of people. And it's the leading cause to tremendous stress-related diseases, and in general, it breaks down the immune system. The person doesn't have the koyach. So we really have an obligation, min ha-Torah, as a covet to this lease, this wonderful lease that we have, this body that Hashem gave us, that you can't really trade in for another on this world. That one of the most moving stories I ever heard was from a doctor, the doctor in Sirius Machlis, who said that the most moving thing he ever heard was when he had to sit down and tell a 16-year-old girl that, Al pi derech hateva, it's the end of the line. There's nothing more they can do. And he told her, he said, I wish I can give you another body. And he'll never forget, she was a frum girl, is what she said to him. She said, if you could, I wouldn't take it. He said, why? Because this is the body that Hashem gave me. Where do I come to a different body? That's not me. Okay, we are who we are if we understand what that means. The Rogatchow was once crossing the street, and there was a wagon coming, and he waited extra long. And the guy said, we can make it. So he said, why did you wait? He said, V'shmarta mi'oid l'nafshei seichem is one of those mitzvahs you don't always get a second chance at, he said. So we really have an obligation to do our best to try to reduce stress for a totally different reason. This is Hashem's body, and I have to take care of it. Look at it that way. If you look at this week's Medrash, there's a big shmooze on the word Vayehi as opposed to the word Vahaya. When the Sedra begins Vayehi, it's usually an Inyan of Tsar. Vahaya is an Inyan of Simcha. You have the Sugya Masechtas Megillah. The Heilige Original attached like this. Vahaya im shechayach tishkach is Hashem Elekacha. Vahaya im shechayach. If you forget the importance of how we have to try to be happy, you can only try, then you should know you're not just forgetting how to be happy, but tishkach is Hashem Elekacha, you'll forget Hashem as well. If you're going to forget the simcha, then tishkach is Hashem Elekacha, and you're forgetting Hashem. Now, there are times in our life where Rachmana litzlan crash. It's impossible to be happy. There are moments in our life. There are sometimes memories that we have to deal with. There are sometimes issues that we have to deal with. Go be happy. Tell it to somebody else. But he's crushed. What could he do? Okay, we're human beings. But at least during the good times, lahazir gedolim alaktanim. So the Svarim touch lahazir is a lotion of shine. Gedolim, on the days that you're in a matzav of godless, that you feel good about yourself, make sure to feel so good about yourself that alaktanim, it should be able to blow fresh air into those days that are rough days. Sometimes you hear somebody say, my spouse, sometimes the husbands do it, the wives do it, so grouchy. And the next morning, he or she, whatever it is, wakes up as if nothing happened. And they expect, I should just go ahead as if nothing happened. I shouldn't be angry. So you don't realize your spouse is saying the same thing about you? Each one of you is taking a day to be grouchy. Right? And the next day, the one spouse is saying, chutzpah, as if nothing happened yesterday. You're both doing it to yourselves. When it's good, it's good. Don't decide what's bad. Life goes so fast. And we spend so much under such stress, under such pain, under such worry. And the Rabbi Shalom, it's part of our culture. It's part of, there's a reason that in these Himalayans someplace, they live to 104, 105, the average lifespan. It's just different kind of a life. And some of the pressure, we just get caught into it. And we have to learn it's part of what Shabbos is all about. It's part of what Yom Tov is all about. It's part of what a Siddur is supposed to be. Sayer Tasa La Teva. That when you open up a Siddur, you're supposed to walk into a Teva. I'm in a different world now. Whatever the Teva takes me. Like we said last week, a Teva had no steering mechanisms. Wherever it takes me, it takes me. There's a Chashav Rosh Hashiva. He used to come to America to collect money. And to cover his payroll, he was calling the light. He was going out of his mind. Mama should have affected him. And then they thought they found a certain machla by him. He went after 2 weeks of aggressive testing. And he was like, what's going to be? What's going to be? And every time somebody came about a nadvin, he said, how can I think now about money? And then the doctor came in after 2 weeks. He said, "Good news, Rabbi. Free and clear. You're okay. You're healthy." And he got out of bed. And the first thing he said is, "Oh, the payroll. What am I going to do about the payroll?" Right? All of a sudden he reverted back to his money. Now think about that. Some of us, that's what we do. Our pendulum swings. It swings back and forth. There's no, either we worry about this or we worry about that. Just, okay, so that problem is over, so what should we worry about now? We're almost in this mode. Lahazir gedolim alaktanim. And that's the school of Parasha Lech Lecha. The school of Parasha Lech Lecha is El ha'oretz asher areka, the land that I'm going to show you. You know, there's a whole tumult now about this possible hurricane or storm, so now it's a hurricane already. So last week they were already saying, one of the kids shows me, "Rabbi, you heard?" I heard what? There's a storm. What's a storm? Right now it's just a tropical depression. It's depressed? No, it's a depression. But it may turn into a storm. Mm-hmm. And the storm may turn into a hurricane. Uh-huh. And it may hit the Caribbean. Uh-huh. And from the Caribbean, it may go northeast. Uh-huh. And it may mix with the cold air coming from Canada. Uh-huh. And therefore next Monday, there may not be yeshiva, right? If everything is going to work out. I said, this is the problem. Who needs this information? It's the way our society works. It's the way our personal life works. It's the way our culture works. We're busy on the possible problems. That, why don't we give equal time? It may not turn into a hurricane. It may not hit the Caribbean. It may not turn north. It may not miss its appointment. It may miss its appointment with the cold air from Canada. At least give it equal time. At least for as many times as you think about things that may go wrong, think about things that may go right. Lahazir gedolim alaktanim. Now, how did Avraham Avinu go from Nisayan to Nisayan? In between those Nisayanis, he was Avraham Avinu. If not, he could have never taken over the next Nisayan. At least those couple of moments of Yishuv Adas and Menuchas HaNefesh, say, I need this. Be realistic. It won't stay this way. Life is up and down, but I need it to carry me through. This week there was a horrific, terrible, terrible tragedy. Police officer was shot. An innocent motorist was killed out of the blue on the Cross Island Parkway. So this guy was telling me, he's not driving on highways anymore. So what exactly are you going to do? You're going to go into a bunker with a gas mask and a lightning rod on your head? And what are you going to do? He says, you don't hear a story like that and that's it? There's no point of living? You can just get shot out of the blue? I said, no, I hear a story like that and I realize that there's a point of living. Because there's no way in the world to protect yourself. Because anything could happen anywhere. You're into the B'nai Hashem's hands. But we have to do what we have to do. And we know we need Rachmei Shemayim. So the more bittul we have, the more we understand Val Nishmaseinu Apekudas Lach. That's right. Now when the Shammais are, we give it over as a Pekadon B'Yatchav Kedrichi. You can't ensure Yishuv Adas. You can't orchestrate life's timetable. Let's say that story. This man called the Rav. This is an old one. He said he's very busy next week. There's a big show in Vegas and he's busy. So he says, what's the shayla? He goes, my father is like, he may just go next week. So you want to go to business when you're sitting Shiva? No, I have a different shayla, he says. Is there any way I can pre-Shiva? Like, could I do Shiva this week? You know what I mean? Because next week, it's really the wrong week. I'm going to be very busy. So I don't know what kind of Rav this was, but obviously if it was an Erlich Rav, he may have, or he made up the answer. He just took his own answer. He said, "Do what you want. Let's do it. Let's be safe." So the guy says, "All right." The Rav said, "I can do what I want." So he decided to sit Shiva a week early. So they say that 5 minutes later, this Rav gets a call. There's an old man there. He goes, "I heard my son is sitting Shiva for me. Am I mechuyev to go be Menachem Avol him? Am I mechuyev to go do that?" Right? There is what we need more than anything else. That we have the seichel. That of course there are threats to our life. Every single person, every single day. Yaakov Avinu came shalom b'gufay, shalom b'mamayna, shalom b'terasai. We live in a society where there are threats to our guf, threats to our mamayin, and threats to our Torah. And we're not in denial, but we have to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give me the seichel to draw the line between reasonable hishtadlus, to satisfy that hishtadlus, meaning to say, what do I have to do reasonably to protect myself, and then to relinquish control. And the emes says that's the whole inyan of the avos. That's what the avos imbue within us. And that is why the bracha of avos, and by extension, Rabbi Yaakov held all the 3 brachas or all the brachas of avos, are crucial to Shemon Esrei. If you don't have kavanah by bracha number 1, you're technically not yotzei Shemon Esrei. And the three avos are Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. Chesed is Avram Avinu. Everything is good. Everything will be good. And Yitzchak is din, din, din. And we need both. We can't be in denial, and we have to say life goes on. And Tiferes is the beauty of putting this together. That means we're going to do a shtadlus. We'll do our best to protect ourselves, to ensure ourselves. We're not in denial. But that's it. At that point it stops. Rabbi Shalom, my life is in your hands. That's Tiferes. That's the beauty. That's the school of the avos. So Kadosh Baruch Hu told Avram Avinu, you got to go. L'dia tevacha b'yolam. And Kadosh Baruch Hu told Avram Avinu, normally traveling takes away three things. Takes away your name, takes away money, takes away period of a. So I once heard a taich that normally traveling in this world confuses us on what the tafkid of having a name is, and what the tafkid of money is, and what the tafkid of period of is. In other words, our idea is, Rabbi Shalom, we're here for a mission. We want to fulfill that mission. Help us. Help us do it. We want to understand money. Why do I want money? Rameir Panajlana said, you look into Yiddish tefillas, like we mentioned the last couple of weeks, over Rosh Hashanah, what are you going to see? Money. Everyone's begging for money. But look a little deeper, what are you going to see? What does he need money for? To marry off his children, to pay schar limit? What do we need money for? So the derech of life, you want covered. You want covered because you want to be respected. You want to be respected because you want your children to respect you. You should have a kayach over them, to be madrich them, to teach them. Period. You want families to be able to do your mission, to answer that question of a saktam, the period of Rabbi Shalom, I did my share in this world. And that their mitzvahs and my simtayim should reflect back on you, whether it's your talmidim, your children, or the people around you. And the Baba V'Rav, Rav Shlomo Baba was nifter, so this man told me the story. His wife works as a secretary in some shul, out of town. And a man walks in, an older man, middle-aged person, he says, this rabbi, shows the Baba V'Rav, Rav Shlomo, he says, you knew who he was? So the woman says, yeah, I'm a Baba of a family, he was our rabbi. He says, I want to tell you something. He says, I have children in Lakewood, and all my children are Shem Shabbos because of him. He says, really? He says, yeah. He says, I was a kid, I grew up in Borough Park, I went to public school. And I lived in an apartment house. And I used to play ball on the street. And the Baba V'Rav used to go visit his mother every single day. And he used to walk, so he should have the mitzvah of walking. He said he used to walk in, and I saw this rabbi with the white beard. He says, he was a public school kid, but I used to hold the door open for him. And every single day he used to put his hand on my shoulder and say, how are you? Every single day. He said, I want to tell you something. That how are you went from my shoulder into my heart, he says. You want to know who I am. Do we know what we could accomplish on this world if we come across the right way? And that's the bracha to Avram Avinu, to rethink his name, rethink his money, rethink why he wants a family, what the purpose of life is. There's an Indian of Kala Makabal of Old Torah. I heard a beautiful story this week. I had a ride with someone. He told me that he grew up in Kanemias. Kanemias is a little moshav in the south of Eretz Yisrael that was under the leadership of Rav Mendelssohn, who was close with the Chazaynish. It was a real Mesiras Nefesh, technically a kibbutz, but it was a Mesiras Nefesh for Shemitah and other things. He said the Rav Mendelssohn had an amazing minhag. I never heard of this in my life. He said after a boy became bar mitzvah, Shabbos morning, he came to the Rav's house and he made Kiddush for the Rav. And the Rav told him that I am not going to make Kiddush today because I'm going to be Yaitze with your Kiddush. And that was to emphasize to this 13 years old how powerful you are. The Rav, you make Kiddush and the Rav is Yaitze. Do you realize who you are? I never heard such a chinuch lesson in my life. How powerful that is. There's an Indian of Kala Makabal of Al Torah Maviri Men Al Malchus Val Derech Eretz. And the trick is, don't say to Hashem, take away my pressure. Pressure is part of life. But say to Hashem, redirect my pressure. Let me have a cheshik Torah. Let me have a cheshik to daven. Let me have a cheshik to teach. Let me do Atzala work. Whatever I'm doing, it's chesed, Atzala, it's holding the door open, it's being nice, it's kibbut avayim, kibbut zayda, kibbut shver. Whatever your nesayin is, it's my Mesiras Nefesh or Shalom Bayis. Whatever it is, give me the kayach. That should be my avodah. So we say, v'haser mimenu yagoin v'anacha. U'malay chaleinu. V'haser mimenu yagoin v'anacha. I'm worried, oh no, chas I'm going to be sued. I'm worried, oh yeah, my car may break down. I may lose my job. I'm worried. Stop, v'haser mimenu yagoin v'anacha. Take it away from me. I'm spending my whole life worrying about myself. U'malay chaleinu. Let me be worried. How am I going to help that yeshiva? How am I going to help that meiser? How am I going to help that kid on the street? How am I going to help that person find the shidduch? Whatever you have to do. Yeah, in other words, it's b'shed pressure. I want the pressure, but I want the pressure b'chesed of a rachamim. V'tzadkeinu b'tzedek of a mishpat. There's such a vort from a guy. He made a ton of money, and then he had such a problem. I don't want to get into it. He said, Hashem saved me. If not for that problem, the money would have turned me into a wild animal. I said, that's such an interesting way of looking at it. That the Rabbi Shalom is helping us in terms of the pressure that we have in our life. We've often said the story that Shlomo Zervil walked away from the Kaisel, and he was bespalled, and it was the tefillah of his life that the Germans shouldn't come in. And he didn't want to go through Shar Yafa, he wanted to go through Shar Shchem, because the tznius is better there. And the Gabbai said, the Arabs were rioting, and an Arab came over and pushed the Rebbe. And the Rebbe got up, he was so happy. He said, Rebbe, what are you so happy? Let's run for our lives. He says, Klal Gadol, when you daven for something, and you don't get it, it's a good sign. You daven for something, you get a smack, that's even a better sign. It's Rebbe, why? He says, imagine someone is sitting over there, and he's collecting money. He's collecting money. And you're watching as it goes back and forth. Right? He's a schnorrer sitting there. Schnorrer is not a nice word. He's an executive director. He's sitting there and he's collecting money. Okay. And somebody comes by, and maybe that's not a nice word. Okay, let's go back to schnorrer. I don't know. Whatever. A poor person is sitting there. Okay. And he's collecting money. We don't really mean to hurt anyone here.
Send it to me.
Okay. So he's sitting over there. If you think that I meant chas v'shalom anything derogatory to anyone, Uncle Yankel will explain, right?
No, you shouldn't send it.
So they want to give money to you.
Okay, maybe right. They do, yeah.
So this person's collecting money, and I'm watching him collect money. And somebody comes by and he's talking to somebody, and the man who he's asking the money from says, okay, so give me a $5 bill. So he goes, he's asking you for money? And you're smiling? Next he says, give me a $10 bill. He's even more happier. Next he says, give me a $20 bill. Give me a $50. What's over with him? You lost it. You're asking him for money, he's asking you for money. The more money he's asking you from, the happier you are. He says, you don't get it. He says, if I ask someone for money, he says, give me a $5 bill. He says, give me at least 10. Yeah. If I ask him for money and he says, give me a 10, that means give me at least 20. If I ask him for money, he says, give me a 50, then he says, give me at least 100. He says, when you ask the Rabbi Shalom for something, you get a smack. So Pshat Kadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, I'm going to give it to you, but I need some change. You can't have the whole thing now. He says, the more change that Kadosh Baruch Hu is asking for you, the more you're getting. He says, you're asking Hashem for something, and it looks like I'm not getting it. Instead, I'm getting a smack. The bigger the smack, the more your tefillah is potent, the more powerful your tefillah is. Saw it so many times in my life. Sometimes you zeichet a big nisim and you come up and, oh no, not today, there's an envelope in the mail, what's that's distressful. This is the change, just the change, Baruch Hashem. We got to think, the more a person understands whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is b'chesed or b'rachamim. So the more he has that, that's Lech Lecha. Go into yourself. What's that story? The guy, he's shikker, he comes home at 3 o'clock in the morning. He's all banged up because he was walking on the street and falling down. He says, my wife's going to kill me. And he says, Lisa, let me put some cream on and cover up my wounds. And he goes into the bathroom, he puts on some creams, he covers up his wounds. He wakes up in the morning, his wife says, what time did you come home last night? 3 o'clock. Yeah, and what state did you come home? I'm fine. Really? Yeah. She says, you shikker, you this, you that. He goes, how do you know? She says, how do I know? He says, somebody put cream and Band-Aids all over the mirror. That's how I know. He says, we're putting the Band-Aid on the mirror. We're not putting the Band-Aid on the right thing. Lech Lecha. I'm stressed about this, I'm stressed about that. Don't say take away the stress. That stress is part of life. Direct my life that I'm using the stress for the right things. There's the din you're allowed to run on Shabbos. To a Dvar Mitzvah, you're not supposed to run on Shabbos. Into the Beis Medrash, you're allowed to run. So I heard once with a murder get tight on that. It's not pshat. Oh, really, you're not supposed to run on Shabbos. Run is stress. But running into the Beis Medrash will let you do it to get to the Beis Medrash. No. When run is stress. If you're running to the wrong thing, run is stress. Oh no, what's going to be? Oh no, right, that's the stress. But if you decide, then I'm going to use my energy, I'm going to use my stress to run to the Beis Medrash and learn, I'm putting the world on hold. That running itself becomes simcha. Not that we're mevater and we're letting you run on Shabbos even though it's hurtful. Then the running becomes simcha. It's interesting. But in Mesil Yisharim, he talks about zrizus. I think it's the only time he uses the word that a lack of zrizus is a sakana. It's mamash a danger to a person's life. What does he mean? He means that if we keep wallowing in our own fear and pain, we're finished. It destroys our lives, it destroys the people around us. We're trying to make up, this is what I want to do with my life. The Rabbi Hashem, take away the stress so I can do it. Not to think that way is a sakana. And the Mesilas Yesharim says Rizos works either in, out, or out, in. It could work either way. Either way is fine. Sometimes it's an inner burning. As a result, you start running. And sometimes just start running and make up a whole slew of things to do and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekabel of all Torah Mavir Mimenu Al Malchus, I'm going to try to do this. Just you take care of my other problems. It'll generate the simcha on the inside. Remember, years ago I was in a bungalow colony. And there were two old people that were staying, two old brothers. And one of them was a shtickle nebuch, losing it a little. And some dementia, Alzheimer's, and he locked himself in the bungalow. We're trying to get him to open the door. I'm standing outside, and we're telling him, whatever his name was, he says, Reb Moshe, come open the door. You're locked in the bungalow. He goes, what? I'm locked in? Yeah. I said, your brother can't get in. Okay, I'm going right away to open the door. And he's not moving, he's sitting there. So Moshe opened the door. Yeah, I'm going right away. An hour. This keeps repeating. I'm going right away. I'm going right away. Finally, they had to call Atzalah to break down the door. He said, I told you I'm going right away. He had no intention of going. Now, it's true that at that point he may have lost it. But somebody said something. Of course, I'm not using real names. He says he lived his life that way. Even when his mind was working. It was always, yeah, I'm going to. He never got around to anything. So when he got older, that just intensified. That's why zrizas, a lack of zrizas, is sakana. Wake up in the morning and make a list of things. This is what I'm doing. And say, Divine Shalom, help me deal with the other stressors in my life so I can do this. So they come and they tell Avraham Avinu, Lot was captured and he got to go to battle against these 4 kings. Vayorak eschanichos. There's a whole timmel of what the touch of that word is. Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Nechemia. Rabbi Yehuda says, Hariku Panayim, that his Talmidim said, what? You want us to go to war against these 4 kings and beat the 5 kings? We'll get killed. Another shot is Avram Hayrik. No, that goes on Avram. That Avram fortified himself and said, whatever it takes, I'm going to do. So it's interesting how it's a common lashon in the Medrash and the Gemara, but the way the Gemara explains it is, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia argue about this. Rabbi Yehuda says this, and Nechemia says that. Or do you have to start out by telling me Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia argue about it? Just tell me Rabbi Yehuda says this, and Rabbi Nechemia says that. So the answer is because both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia agree that Elu ve'elu, that we are sometimes faced with such challenges. What? My nephew was captured. I got to go to war against an impossible situation. And hariku panei, and we turn green. And we say, I can't. This Nisayan I can't deal with. And you have to turn around and you have to go to the Avraham Avinu side and say, whatever it is, I'll do whatever it takes. There's a whole machloikas in the Gemara, in the Medrash, what he did. Did he do Muhammad? Did he try to buy them off? Did he just convince them? I'll do whatever it takes. The reason it's Rabbi Yehuda and Nechemia, because Rabbi Yehuda and Nechemia agree that both happen. Our initial reaction to an Nisayan is always, we're lost. Oh no! But you can go from there to the Avraham Avinu side and say, no, we will do it. I want to share with you one last story tonight. The man told me the story that he heard it firsthand, and I'll tell you exactly who he heard it firsthand from as the story progresses. The Baba V'Rav, Rav Shlomo, Zecher Tzadik L'Vracha, came to America, took up residence in the West Side. And I don't think he had a minion. And the minion that he had was shlach. He was mamish dealing with atzamah sivacious, dried up bones. And he would stand outside and call people, you're Jewish, you want to come into daven? You need a minion. That's how he started. Amazingly enough. You want to think about the magnitude of what he built from where he started, it's just beyond imagination. So he's inside, and his son, Reb Naftali, who would also come, who just came from Eretz Yisrael, he had survived the war through a different way, and also an amazing story. He was on one of 3 ships, one was blown up by the Nazis, a whole story out. But he came from Eretz Yisrael, and he was staying together with his father. And they called the man in, and the man didn't look like a very big tzaddik. He was a survivor of the war, he was a Polish Yid that was in Auschwitz for 5 years. Right. And the Rav was the Baba Rav, small smiles, and he said, in the you're Shem Shabbos in the Haim. He says, in the Haim. He says, in the Haim I was about Tefillah Friday night. So the Rav says, please, the Yamid is yours. He says, and his son was saying, it doesn't look like, you're giving him Kabbalah Shabbos. You want to give him a nice kishka, give him a nice kugel, giving him Kabbalah Shabbos. And this will call this man Rabbi Yaakov. Every Friday he showed up and he gave him Kabbalah Shabbos. And then sometimes he would talk and he was angry at God and angry at Hashem. We shouldn't be tested. He used to daven Kabbalah Shabbos. The Rav said he gets Kabbalah Shabbos. One day he doesn't show up, one Friday night, another Friday night. So it's Shabbos afternoon. So Shloima says to his son, Reb Naftali, go find him. Where should I find him? I heard he lives on the other side of Central Park. It's a walk. And go see, maybe ask. What should I tell him if I see him? Say, I want to know where he is. So this Naftali goes, he takes a Yid with him. And this person who told me the story heard it from this Yid. They're walking through the park, saying where they're looking for a needle in a haystack. Hello, Rabbi Yaakov, stand on on Park Avenue. So as they're walking through the park, they can't believe it. They see this Rabbi Yaakov is sitting on a park bench, holding a newspaper and smoking a cigar. Shabbos afternoon. So they go over to him. They say, the Rav would like to know where you are. Oh, really? He wants to know where I am. Yeah, he's worried about you. Yeah, okay. And they walk back and they come home. And he tells his father, he said, we found him! We found him in the park Shabbos afternoon, smoking a cigar! Hey. The Rav said, can't be. It can't be. We just saw him there. Can ich sein? Et nicht gereicht. We just saw him smoking. I don't believe it. It's too late in there. I just saw the man smoking. So the Rav said, nicht reichet, the Deutsch reichet. He's not the one that's smoking, it's the Germans that are smoking. Okay? You don't know what he went through. Mm-hmm. That's what the Rav said. He shows up the next Friday night. You're asking about me? Why? Give it to him now. Give it to him. Give me some more. The Rav said, I miss you. Lachadaidi. Go daven. Couldn't believe it. Son couldn't believe it. After you, the Deutsch reichet. He's not smoking. Fast forward some odd 30 years later. Baba V'Rav, the minion is not the problem. I was keeping the minion away. Right? Hundreds, thousands of Hasidim. And a man shows up after Shachris, pushes himself over to the Rav. He goes, Rav, gedenkt mir, you remember me? 30 years ago, doesn't remember. He says, I'm Rabbi Yaakov, they used to daven by you Friday night in the West Side. Mm-hmm. He goes, Rabbi Yaakov, oh, wow, I don't believe it. He says, come, I'm going to have some fish sticks. Let's eat breakfast together. He goes, I don't want to eat breakfast together.
Herring.
He said, maybe. He says, I don't want to eat breakfast together. He says, I am marrying off my first grandchild. I want the Rav to come be Masada Kaddish. So the Rav said, believe me. He said, I don't even do it now for my close relatives. I can't. But if you want, I'll come for one of the Sheva Brachas. He says, great. So he tells them which night they're making Sheva Brachas. And the Rav is now, 80s, 90s. He calls his son. And he says, I want you to come with me to a Sheva Brachas. His father's enough Gaboim, I don't want to go alone. I want you to come with me. So they come to the Sheva Brachas. He's not a chassid. But by the Sheva Brachas are literally hundreds of grandchildren. He's marrying off his first grandchild. Most of them Talmidei Chachamim, sitting and learning and koil in all different places. And when they walked out of that Sheva Brachas, the Baba Rav turned to his son and said, did I tell you that it wasn't him smoking, it was the Germans who are smoking? Mm-hmm. There are ruchniistic collapses in our life. When it collapses, remember, it's not you smoking, it's your Yetzer Hara smoking. Pick yourself up and get there to that Kabbalah Shabbos, to that Vayorek Es Chanicha. Connect. My father used to say, the winter Parshiyas wear a warm coat. Hold on to that coat. Hold on to Avraham Avinu. Ela Oretz Asherek. I don't have answers. But when you say, let me see what's in store for my life, I am holding on, Vayorek Es Chanicha, I'm moving forward, then you will find that you will see that there is no need to know answers. There's a need to be able to go on. A good Shabbos.
Yeah. Wow.